it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, this one is a scraps video. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I had these two leaves here. They were bent. They got bent in the process. I really only needed the outline of what I had die cut for them. So I did just throw them in the bin. They had some spray on them. It wasn't worth it to me. I didn't know what to do with them. And it's just easier, right? Than them sitting on your desk. And then they were staring at me. They were staring at me and glaring and looking at me like I'm available. I've got options. And so they did get wet in the bin. They are a bit damp from some cleanup and they're just not in great shape. But I did get inspired by it. So here's a easy quick card that we're going to create using these two beautiful leaves. Now this foliage is from Pink and Main. This is actually the Leafy Dies 1 set, I believe. And there is an outline die and then there's the solid background die. And this is the solid one of the two. And I believe, I can't even remember why I had cut these, but I just didn't need these insides. And then I'd shifted them around my desk a million times. I got some spray on them and then it was just over. I threw them out. But anyway, they're back. And so I am working on a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper. Now I'm using the smooth side for this. I have cut it down a little bit so that I'm thinking later on I want some kind of border. Now, when I was thinking about the border, I thought I might create one because we're going to do sort of like a little bit of a masking situation. So these Gina K strips, there actually are 3 different size strips that come in this packet. There is an 1/8 of an inch, a 1/4 inch, and 1/2 an inch. I decided to pull these in a little bit from the edge and create sort of a border this way. Now, I will say, if you are going to be putting, like a lot of liquid and a lot of moisture onto your project, but you want good masking, then this Gina K, either the strips or the sheets, is your absolute go-to because it is absolutely bleed proof. This stuff is great and it's just what I use when I know that I don't want to be disappointed by my results. And you put, effort into a project, and I thought that this border was going to feature, be quite a feature. But anyhow, life has other plans, and that's okay. We take turns and twists when we are card making. Now, I am running my fingers around the edge here, because I want to get a really good seal on the masking magic strips, and that is the trick to those crisp, beautiful lines. And then this is where I've got my 2 little leaves, right? I am going to use these with some sprays. Now, these are actually DIY homemade Oxide sprays. All I do is get a clear plastic bottle, just like this one, and then I get whatever it is, whichever color of the Reinker. For this one is going to be the Twisted Citron. Give it a good shake up, make sure that ball shakes all those beautiful ingredients, because when they are in the Reinkers, they often sort of settle, and these oxides, as you know, are made up of quite a few components. I put 3 drops in the bottom at most. It looks like nothing down there, but then I just add some water to it, and I have no measuring. I just do a couple of spritzes, or I get a pipette. I knew I wanted to use a little bit of this color and then mix it. So actually, I just mix up a little bit at a time, and I find that way it doesn't sit for as long. This one, the yellow one, which is the mustard seed color, I'm going to be using that one, and I had used that on a previous project. I am using some removable adhesive on the back of these leaves here, because these are just cut out of regular cardstock. They're not out of watercolor cardstock. They're not out of masking sheets. So I'm like, we'll just see how we go here. It's going to be okay. I cut the second leaf a little bit shorter, but they're actually exactly the same die cut. I do have a little paper towel there, just in case. And I'm coming in from quite a height, because, as I said, those leaves are not they're not masked down onto, they're not adhered down onto the page, and I just have to be a little bit careful that I don't spritz underneath them or spritz them away. So here is the Twisted Citron that I made. I'm just making sure that that little tube is into the liquid that we have created, and then I add a little bit of that Twisted Citron. Now the yellow and the Twisted Citron are definitely mixing, so it's a little, not as easy to see the individual colors, but we'll work on that. I removed one of the masks just because I thought at this point I was going to I just want a little bit of the color underneath it. I want one to be like a stark white and one to be a little bit greeny, but still lighter than all of my background, if that makes sense. Now, whilst I've got the green out, I'm actually going to use some Mowed Lawn, which is like one step a little bit darker green than the Twisted Citron, and I'm just going to add it into what I already have. Again, like 2 to 3 drops is absolutely ample. You don't need much. This is very concentrated. Obviously, it's the Reinker, so it's very concentrated, and I just add in another good spritz of water, add them together, and I've got not a pure Mowed Lawn, but, you know, a new green, which is good to go. I am drying these in between just a little bit with the heat gun. That way I know they're going to layer up more so than mix together. So if you put wet on wet, it's going to mix a little more. If you put the wet on the dry, it's going to be a little more separate and layer up. Oxides do layer really well. That's one of the fantastic features about them. So we're using that to our advantage. I'm spritzing around. I mean, there's no plan here. There is no, as I said, I was purely just playing and these were in the bin and I decided to record this and definitely wasn't going to post it, but actually it's just a reminder that we can kind of turn anything into a really fun card, even though this was not planned and there was nothing super technical or crazy about it. I thoroughly enjoyed this process because I was just experimenting. It was really fun. I took the little nozzle out of the green and just did some little drops. I guess that's kind of like faux splatter. And then I'm going to take these Stardust Jelly Roll pens. Now, I actually am very lucky to have a subscriber who sent these to me not a really long time, maybe a year or 18 months or so ago, and I have been loving using these. Essentially, these are like glitter pens, I would say. Very nice, beautiful glitter pens, and I'm going to add in some sort of doodling, I guess. I've got a couple of different greens, and we'll see how this goes. I am just going to do like loose, easy stems and loose, easy leaves and outlines. I don't want to follow it exactly, and the lines actually are pretty crisp from the spritzing, I will say. That worked pretty well, but you know, it's okay if I go inside the lines or outside the lines. This is meant to be sort of like loose and easy, you know, sketchy sort of look. So that's what we're going for. And at the moment, I still have that Masking Magic strips around the outside because I thought I was going to keep those beautiful, crisp and white. But, you know, as I said, we take turns every now and then. And I'm going to go over the second one. As I said, I wanted these to be a different color, but I don't want them to disappear altogether. So this is going to help us by outlining them. And then you can add in some extra details. You can add in some doodling. I decided to go relatively simple with this. I'm going to add a center point to each of them and then go ahead and add in some really unbelievably simple dots. I'm just going to do one side of each of the leaves, and you could go in and doodle any sort of, you know, crisscross pattern or triangles or squiggles or, you know, anything. It doesn't matter. This isn't realistic. It doesn't have to be a certain way. I was really, as I said, just playing and seeing how I go. I wasn't sure whether I should do the rest of them. And I sort of, you know, take a look and take a moment and think, yeah, why not? It's okay. And so I do the rest of them. You also could do this in like a black fine liner pen if you didn't specifically have the colored ones. I will link the best I can to the ingredients and bits and pieces that I used today, but this one is one of those, you know, just using what we've got, using what you've got around you, being inspired by the things around you and not taking it too seriously. Honestly, I was really just enjoying this process. And now at this point, I take off my masking and it's not quite what I was thinking. It just looks a little funny. It looks a little unfinished. I think I needed to have the masking stop on the corners, and it also needed to be skinnier because it's outweighing the green that goes around the very outside that's left. But that's okay. Nonetheless, I'm going to cut off that little excess piece of green around the outside. So the masking is still there, which is good. You know, we're still using it. And then because I do think it needs something, it's going to sit on a white card base. And so I feel like it just needs that extra little layer. And so I'm going to use the Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to create that matting layer using that. Now, I could have masked off some around the edge of the original piece if I didn't want to add more cardstock, but we were running out of room at this point, so I decided to just make its own matting layer. And really, really simple, adding the ink to the outside. We don't need to do the inside. No one's going to see that part, although if you wanted to, you could die cut out of the middle, I guess. But I was happy enough just doing it this way. And then it's got that nice green and then a crisp white border and then that darker green coming in. So this is more what I was going for when I was thinking about it. And then when it came to a sentiment, I didn't feel like doing the stamping process. And so I'm going to go with a more of a version that is ready to go, and these are pretty handy to have on hand. In fact, some of the Katie Sue designs, I have the Thinking of You bundle, but I see that there are some more available and I really like them. So this is these here. There are so many in here, more than I probably could ever use, but what I like is it's not just Thinking of You. These ones here are the Gina K ones. They're a lot more straightforward and plain in black and white, which I like because you can add a banner and you can die cut them out. These ones here are already cut out. You just need to pop them out of their packaging, and these are in silver and then in gold and then in the colors. But as I said, these have a whole lot of different sayings. So it says in Thinking of You and Deepest Sympathy and Just to Say and You're in My Thoughts, and lots of different ways, I guess, of saying the Thinking of You. So I like that there's a little bit of a point of difference there rather than just the Thinking of You. So I quite like that. Sending love and yeah, lots of deepest sympathy, lots of different ways to say it. So I have chosen this one here. And I could have chosen either the gold or the silver around the outside. Either probably would have been fine. This is In Our Thoughts. And I think this is really nice for, you know, like if someone loses a pet, or if someone, I just think, you know, little bits and pieces, or if someone loses a loved one or something like that. It's a really nice little saying. So I felt like this background goes along nicely with it. And I had a whole lot of fun making this card into something that I otherwise truly would have thrown out. And not that this is, you know, impossible, but it's just the fact that it sort of sparked my creativity and thinking, I shouldn't throw that out. I think I can use it. I know I can use it. How can we use it? So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. As I said, I will list all of the things I have used down below, but let me know if you've ever had that happen, if you've thrown out something and it has glared back at you. See you next time. Bye.